gentlemen, welcome to the Union Jackoff. My name is Daniel Muggleton. I am wet because London has decided to be London today. Endless rain, heavier than I've ever felt in native Australia, but I'm joined by an Australian and a Kiwi, the Antipodean version of the podcast I've been waiting for so long. Please welcome James Nokise.
Hello.
And Laura Davis.
Hello.
Fucking strong energy from the start.
We're like trying to bring that October rain energy to the podcast.
It is October, isn't it? First day.
Yeah, man.
First day. Okay. Yeah. Rain. Yeah. Australia, this would be spring. This is spring in both.
Yeah.
In New Zealand also.
Yes, we have similar seasons
We
to
share
Australia.
a hemisphere.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice? When you were talking about that earlier, I genuinely was like, what does he mean spring? Oh, yeah. The other side of the world.
Well, I think because you guys are from like Melbourne and Sydney, and the climate is a bit drier and or warmer than where I'm from, like Wellington.
Yeah.
Like this, I was saying, this like weather in London right now is weird to me because it's exactly what it would be doing in Wellington and New Zealand.
Right.
And it's almost around the same temperature as well.
Okay. So it's like properly living up to the Antipodean vibe. This is the other side of the world. It's the opposite, but it's the same.
Yeah, it's like meteorologically discombobulating.
That was a lot of syllables this early on in the
Too
pod.
many.
I know.
This is why I'm glad Laura's here, because she can give
It's
me
from
like...
Perth, where it doesn't rain very much at all. It's just
No.
sort of the same. You can have the same day for months on end. It's great.
Is that comforting or
Yeah,
terrifying?
you never have to think, oh, what am I going to wear? You wear what you wore the day before. It's fine.
Yeah, I think that's
It's not
like...
going to change.
I hate that here when the weather changes at some point throughout the day. I feel lied to. Like, straight up. Like, London, just like I saw the day, I decided upon the sun, and then it's like 11 p.m. Nah, fuck you, dude. You're walking home in the rain. I'm like, rude.
I was in Melbourne for 5-6 years, and so I still have that sort of unreasonable panic that comes if I feel like I'm even slightly dressed wrong for the day, because it gets so cold so quickly. Like, there's times where it'll drop something like 10 degrees in a couple of hours or something, and you never... If I feel a slight breeze, I still can't shake that. Oh, I better bring everything, just in case. Whereas in
Right.
Perth, if you feel a slight breeze, you go, that will pass.
Yeah.
Or,
That
you
was
know.
the day's one breeze.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll be fine.
But if I feel like I'm even slightly cold when I leave the house, Melbourne has made me filled with fear.
I can tell. Like, I can see like the anxiety now.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, remember that time that I forgot a scarf?
Yeah, and then it hailed, and then it was hot.
Yeah.
Like in Perth, if you're getting rained on, you probably should just check that some meth head isn't just taking a piss on you.
And that is producer Mooch laughing in the background at Australian Stereotypes. Mooch, how are you?
I'm good. I've got a lot of relatives in Perth, so
Really?
I'm talking about.
yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, actually, this podcast, I've never been to Perth, and I've never been to New Zealand.
Ah,
No, so you guys can lie to me
well,
as
let
much
me
as you
tell
want.
you a tale.
I mean, you could decide whether it's a lie or not, but in Perth, last time I was there, I legitimately saw a woman pissing behind a rubbish bin, yelling at her boyfriend to shield her at about 11 p.m. at night.
Yeah, and I saw her like an hour later when she was shitting like this.
Is that how you guys met?
Yeah, it's beautiful, real romantic.
I've become obsessed with this thing called Bread Gang. Do you know about Bread Gang?
I do not know about Bread Gang.
Okay, so it's
This
based.
sounds like the kind of thing a man wearing a hat indoors would know about.
Yeah,
The
it's,
Bread Gang.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's just Australians who go and find out the loosest city, and they just go around and they just find these people who are fucked on like meth, coke, kep, the lot. And it's very funny. It's YouTube. It's kind of derailing this, so but I'm gonna pass it on back to you. I thought you might know about it, but like obviously it's just
No, we have standards.
I mean, this is my producer, right? Like, he brought his dog in a bag to this show to give it a bit of warmth.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a good dog.
Bag dog,
Bag dogs.
bread gang.
Yeah.
The Bread Gang.
Look them up. It's good fun.
The Bread Gang. All right. Yeah. So wait. So Perth. You were at Perth this year, both of you. Both of you.
I was in it earlier, yeah.
But the same time? No.
Yes.
Yeah, back at the beginning of the year. I think, yeah. But
what?
not at the festival.
Not at the festival. Okay, that's what I was hinting at, because I know it's the Perth Festival that begins.
We were just there.
You were just there, just hanging
there.
out.
Yeah.
There was another reason to go.
Yeah.
To meet your folks.
Yeah, all my family lives there. Like,
Was that to meet them for James, or James already met them?
James had already met them.
Okay.
But there was not for very long, I think, just a couple of times. So that was
Right.
sort of the first time we'd gone back to stay.
I mean, I have family there as well, and Laura's never met them.
Uh-huh.
But that's because there are Samoans everywhere. But there's actually quite a lot of Wellington Pacific Islanders in Perth.
Okay.
Like working in the mines and on the oil platforms.
Sure.
So occasionally when I do a show, I'll do comedy in Perth, and there'll be a weird 80-20 Kiwi-Aussie split.
Wow.
So I'll go
So they
on
just all
stage.
come out. They're like, here's our boy, finally.
Yeah, and it's like not even like just any Kiwi. It's specifically Maori and Pacific Islanders, which is a
Okay.
completely different show dynamic, because there's like this in-jokey humor.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and you know how every culture's got their gallows humor, eh? Like it's like, and so there's some real like and they've come to hear that, and for us to have that. But there's this 20% Australian audience who have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
So I've got to kind of walk them through it, and it only happens in Perth because there's that many there.
Right, and
Like,
that's just because of the mining stuff and the oil stuff. Just the
Yeah.
work, the money in Perth.
it's actually cheaper for a lot of New Zealanders to live in New Zealand and just fly in because of the
Oh, the FIFO, fly in, fly out,
Yeah.
working. Because it's like, for anyone, just for anyone who's British who has no idea what the fuck we're talking about at this point, basically Perth had the big mining boom, and it's got oil as well. And you have the workers there, they fly in
Yeah.
for 2 weeks, work, fly out for 2 weeks. And like, that's the contract, that you can't work for longer than that. Like, they
Yeah.
don't let you.
And the Australian dollar is stronger than the New Zealand dollar. So a lot of low socioeconomic people in New Zealand have been able to, get themselves up and out by taking mining and oil work in Australia.
And we're happy to have you, because it's a shit job. It's
Hey,
real hard.
look,
From
some of
everyone
us-
who's ever done it, I've just been like, man, it is tough. It is
Some
a
of us
tough
can't
slog.
play rugby. I think that's the brutal truth. We can't all play for all of the world's rugby teams.
Well, I was actually just to make. Sorry, I just realized I haven't given this context at all. You guys are married. That's why
Yes.
we're talking about your in-laws and stuff like that. Not just
I mean,
a couple of mates from other countries meeting each other's parents.
I was hanging out that we would never reveal during the podcast that we were married.
Oh, I'm
And
so sorry.
And it would just be a surreal experience for the people watching and listening.
We can edit this out and really make it just like a big cliffhanger. Just like at the end, like they're married.
Will
Oh,
they?
fuck.
Won't they? Have they?
Man, the Australian-New Zealand comedy communities are close.
Yeah.
Real close.
Wait, we should just to bring up rugby early, just to get it out of the way because of the World Cup. I saw you put this thing up about Samoans playing for every team, and you're absolutely right. And I just missaid Samoans there, didn't I?
Oh yeah, I mean it's Samoan, but like as I say on stage, I don't think we're that precious about the enunciation of vowels,
Okay.
as long as they're in the right order.
It's in the right order? Great. Well, I will crush that for the majority of the show. But yeah, you guys seem to play for every team, including the Australian team. I'm pretty sure there's a couple on there. Why the diaspora? Why is it so spread out across all the different teams?
Colonialism and and economics. It's good contracts. In the old days, a lot of Pacific Island rugby players would play for the Rugby World Cups, which were primarily in Europe, and then would get contracts with the rugby league teams. So actually, in England, specifically, in Scotland, hilariously as well, but in England in the north. Your Leeds, your York, and Manchester, there's all of these Pacific Island families who
Right.
are a couple of generations deep
Just because of the World Cup?
because of rugby and rugby league.
Right.
Like my cousin played rugby league for England, Mr. Murray Vasivalu. And he played for England because he couldn't get a contract in Australia and New Zealand. But he could get one here. It's put his kids through high school. It's got himself a nice house, helped out his family back in Samoa, and so...
Is it because the standard over here is like just slightly lower than the club rugby or like professional rugby standard in Australia and New Zealand? Or
No, I
there's
don't-
just more teams?
I don't necessarily think so. I think there's just... I think it's, honestly, it's people who are willing to come from our climates
Sure.
and play it, because it's cold.
I think similar to how there are so many Australian artists in Britain and anything like that.
I was just about to say that. If you're willing to
Yeah.
give up the climate, there is economic advantage
Yeah.
to coming here.
And that thing of, we don't have a massive media industry in Australia, so there are more jobs and there are just more opportunities if you're willing to move.
Yeah, well, I mean, just sheer population size.
Think
And
so.
proximity to Europe,
Yeah.
because the French play rugby and the Italians do. Have you got the thing?
Yeah.
Toulouse have like a really powerhouse team, don't they?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, yeah.
There's a whole bunch of, and that's really handy because when you go to France, if you speak English, with respect to your producer, they're not big fans in France of the English. So if you speak English, they go,
I'm Irish.
Yeah, exactly, man. If you gotta quickly establish Nouveau Zealand or Australia,
Yeah.
or it's Samoan, like. It's really interesting to be from the complete other side of the world, and especially from the Pacific Islands. And you go to places where there is rugby, and I think that's one of the small things that sport has really been great for our people, is spreading that idea of the identity about. I mean, take New Zealand. Just straight up take New Zealand. Look at it, like before Lord of the Rings, it's basically just the All Blacks.
That is true. Like before that, I had nothing. I had nothing to hang
No
my hat
idea.
on.
Yeah, and sheep. Like that was
And
it.
sheep, that's true.
Sheep and rugby.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true actually.
Now it's sheep, rugby, Lord of the Rings, and Lord.
No, and Flight of the Conchords.
Oh, and
come
Conchords
on.
as well.
You
Sorry.
guys,
Sorry.
I think.
Sorry,
and
Benjamin.
I feel kind of sad to admit this, but I'm curious what Laura reckons. Do you think New Zealand has kind of like eclipsed Australia in terms of like arts output recently? Like they're doing very
I think
well.
it's funded better. We've had Conservative government for a couple of good terms now, and the cuts to ABC, but not just that, but the grassroots funding has all been, when they went through and they took all the independent arts grants and funded them through one body, and then it was all sort of dealt with so that money went to things like the opera.
The opera?
Yeah, when George Brandis was in
Right.
charge. Remember there was sort of those graffiti campaigns where they would graffiti George Brandis' face onto sort of all sorts of different artworks because he was sort of in charge of where the funding went, and so a lot of regional stuff got cut, and I think that's had a massive impact on the Australian arts industry, and it's sort of like they stemmed it 5, 6, 7 years ago, and you can see it drying up in parts. You can see the flowing effects of those cuts.
Right. So the cuts were a while ago, but now's when we're really seeing what happened? Why are there so many operas?
Why aren't there any new shows, Australian ones, coming through on these different platforms? Where are these things? Why aren't there? Like, people are starting to notice that there is a lack of output.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate when I came through in Western Australia. I was young, and there was a lot of youth grants for artists in Perth during the mining boom. There was money, so I was given, just small grants here and there to go and like take a show over to Melbourne Comedy Festival and things like that, and that's not not quite as common anymore.
Okay, that's interesting. I just don't know about that side of stuff. I've never sought out a grant. It's never been like in my head.
A white male.
I know.
You should be like, play that card, man. Get those grants.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you just got to, like, for me it's different. You got to, you don't have to like look for government funding. You just kind of have to look for your dad's number, give him a buzz, and just kind of be like, look, I've got some ambition. Can you help?
I reckon the Australian government would fund this podcast. What do you reckon?
Absolutely.
It'd be nice.
Go over.
Well, look, quick shout out to the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. It's now listed on their podcast library on their website. Cheers, guys.
Nice work, Melbourne International Comedy Festival.
One email. They were like, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't realize the. Are you from a rural area in Perth? I never.
Sort of. Outer metropolitan, it would technically count as, but there's a lot of
metropolitan is definitely a technical term.
Yeah, there's horses and there are orchards, but it's not remote.
Okay.
It's we don't have to drive 3-4 hours to the nearest town or anything like that, and a lot of remote regional communities are in that situation.
Sure. So how far out of like the centre of Perth?
An hour.
An hour? Cool. Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
An hour. Is that just standard? I think that's like the standard transport time for anything in my
exactly.
brain. Even here, which makes no
Yeah.
sense. It's just like you go from like a certain part of London to another bit. It's about an hour.
Yeah. So it's not built up. There's a lot of bush, but I am conscious that I didn't grow up in something where you could only access, the flying doctor service or something like that, where there's no ambulances, no.
Yeah. It wasn't
services.
isolated. Was that? Yeah.
A little bit. Like, it's isolated if you don't drive, if you don't have a car. You do have to just stand in the bush until someone comes and gets you.
Did that ever happen?
Yeah, heaps. Like, you can only walk to your mate's place somewhere else in this tiny little pocket, because if you try and walk into the city, it'll take 4 or 5 hours or something like that.
Okay. No, sorry. I'm getting the vibe on the distance now.
Yeah.
Because like an hour, I'm like, that's not that far. And then it's like 4 or 5 hours. What? I'm like, that's far.
Yeah.
That's a voyage. And you were Wellington, which is the capital
It's the capital
of New Zealand.
It's got a very good public transport system because it's very small.
Okay.
You can have, and even then they've just screwed it up, which is quite hilarious to watch from overseas. The bus system there. But I was like saying to Laura, the comedy scene in New Zealand is in Auckland and always has been.
Right.
But a lot of the famous acts come from outside of Auckland. And so when I started, like, we didn't have like Jetstar or which is EasyJet over here in the UK. We didn't have a cheap flight service. So you couldn't necessarily afford to get a plane to Auckland to go to the gigs. So you had to get the 12-hour bus.
Sorry, just South Island, North Island, are they the same island? Or?
Wellington's at the bottom of the North Island, and Auckland's sort of towards the top. But it's 12 hours. It's the distance London to Edinburgh.
12 hours drive.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it used to be.
Okay.
You can now do it. You can probably do it in 7.5 if you're pushing a few speed limits. Because the roads were bad.
Sure.
Like, people are, like, to give UK listeners an understanding, like, and anyone who's from the UK who's been to New Zealand will understand this. Our main state highway, our State Highway 1, like the UK M1, 8 lanes, and like you go, was it up to Manchester, I think? London to Manchester, M1.
Yeah, just bang.
Yeah,
like
bang. Oh, Manchester, Glasgow,
70 miles an hour.
Yeah, you're smashing it. Like New Zealand State Highway 1, you had to stop several times because of sheep and cattle. Like, that's,
I like how much intensity you said that with.
like, you
just
just
stop sometimes.
But you shouldn't have to, and it's like only when you leave, like when you grow up, when you're used to something.
Yeah.
Like, when I came over here and was like on the roads, going like, I would just like some idiot hick just staring at the window, go, whoa. Like the road, like there's no delays. It doesn't like shrink from a motorway in 50 meters into a single lane,
right?
That then has gravel for a little bit. And it's like it's so different, and I don't think you realize how, because New Zealand is weirdly like Perth, and that the isolation really like it leads to some real quirks.
Yeah.
People don't appreciate how far. People think New Zealand's distance from Australia is like France and England.
Yeah, they think it's close because we did long distance at the start. And people go, "Oh yeah, because you were just close." And no, it's still like a 6-hour flight.
Is it a 6-hour flight
Between Melbourne and...
I thought it was like 4.
Oh, no, it's
shit.
3 between Melbourne and Wellington. It's 6, 7 between Wellington and Perth.
Oh wow, yeah, 7's huge. That's like Sydney to Singapore.
Yeah,
That's a decent voyage.
yeah. So it's like it's quicker. When Laura was in Melbourne, I was in Wellington. It was quicker for us to pop over there than for her to pop back and see her family.
Right.
We could meet in Sydney or something, and it still blows my mind being over here. The thought that you can just drive anywhere and end up anywhere else is something that I'm still adjusting to, because like in Perth, there's all the coastal towns and everything like that, but the fact that people don't consider Birmingham to just be a suburb of the whole UK, the fact that you go and you're like, oh, this is a nice town, and people are like, no, it's a city. You're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like Perth.
I'm sorry for calling your town a city.
Well, like it's Perth to Adelaide is fucking ages.
What is it, like 15 more? No, it must be more.
Yeah, a bit more, because it's like 8 between Melbourne and...
Melbourne City's about
Adelaide.
8 to 10.
Yeah.
And then, Melbourne to Adelaide's a bit shorter.
Yeah, but Western Australia is the size of the UK, I think.
Yeah.
Because people do interesting things with size. Like, I don't think people realize, and even I didn't think about this until Laura was telling me, like, Australia and the United States have about the same width. Is that right, guys?
Yeah.
It's something like that.
It's similar.
Australia's 3,000 miles. I know that because of a joke I researched, but I don't know the US.
And
Can you look it up, the US?
Yeah.
How
wide it is.
There's
How
a great educational website called truesize.com.
Truesize.com. That sounds intimidating.
It sounds intimidating, but it's where you can drag different countries to different points on the equator to see their relative landmass. So things like
cool.
Russia is not as big as you think it is.
Because of where it is on the globe.
Australia is much bigger because once you
So
are looking at something on the curve.
It's 2,680 miles. Wide.
Australia?
No, America.
2,680 miles. Yeah, that means Australia's wider.
Yeah.
If that joke of mine is true.
It's girthier, mate.
That's the most important bit.
But that's the thing. So I think people, because I know New Zealanders, I've learned this from talking to them. Like, they go Sydney, Melbourne, probably just a gap, few hours,
Yeah.
Perth.
Sure.
Like, they can't comprehend the size of the desert. And I think it's the same with Europeans, is that they go, oh yeah, Australia, I reckon that's about the size of, Spain to Germany, maybe.
Yeah.
Like,
it's insanely big. Like,
Yeah,
when you
like
talk to Europeans about drives, and they're just like, yeah, that was like a long one. It's like, how far? It's like 4 hours, and you're like, what?
but if you show them how much of Europe you can fit into Australia,
Yeah.
then they're like,
you can.
Well, I
what?
say on stage, like, Australia's like the size of like all of Europe, and
Yeah,
you can just see them kind of be like, no, it's not, and it's like, no, but it is.
Yeah,
that's the distance. Like, bang.
I think that Perth perspective again, because I used to fly over to Sydney and Melbourne a lot to do shows, and when the planes weren't even as good as they are now, you could sit and watch the same bit of fucking desert for like 2 hours, 3 hours. It's much faster now in the new planes, but it used to be like 4 hours to Melbourne, and then 6, 7, 8 to Sydney, or Brisbane. Like, if you're going
Across,
up, ages.
Because it's the diagonal. Yeah, it's like the desert is like huge. I tried to explain to someone, I forget who it was, just like, because I've driven from like Sydney to Broken Hill, which is like kind of the westernmost point of New South Wales, and it's just like, it's just flat. There's nothing. There's one lane going each way, and the road is just dead straight, and you can just see it for like 100 kilometers. So you can just see a car coming for like 30 minutes, being like, yeah, fuck, he's almost here. Like, just watching it, just in the distance, just like, yeah, no, probably about 20 minutes and we'll see him. Then like you wave, you're like, like, just keep going. And like every driver waves just because you're like, I don't know when I'll see someone else.
But also,
again.
like, I reckon it's to prove you're not insane. Let's go, you're real, right? Yeah, I'm real. Are you real?
That was my theory about why like Australians talk slow. It's just because in the old days when it was just so rare to see anybody, you really wanted to draw it out. But like we had no news, so you'd have to really slow down the speech. Like, there's the more country you go, the slower it is. They're just like, fucking, yeah, nah. Yeah, it's all right.
I reckon Kiwis do the opposite. I reckon we talk quite fast because we're so emotionally repressed. We just want to get the conversation out of the way as quickly as possible. You all right, mate? Yeah, all right. Yeah, good. Yeah, okay, mate.
I think that's one thing we should address here. I think they think that we don't get on in this country. They think that like Australia and New Zealand have some kind of like dislike for each other.
That said, the New Zealanders hate us way more.
Really?
Oh, so much more. Hilariously more.
We're like, our friends. And New Zealanders are like, fuck you.
But like, it's so big brother, little brother though.
Right.
It's so younger sibling who's like, you never loved me. And then Australia's like, we love you so much.
You're so cute.
Yeah. What are you talking about? You guys are doing great. We're so proud of you.
Yeah, we're like, fuck you. England always loved you more.
I mean, we were closer.
Yeah.
I think that's like all it is, right? If like you flipped the locations, like I think New Zealand would be the one that everyone talks about.
It's funny because I don't think we appreciate that without Australia, we would not have achieved as much as we have. Like, Kiwis are renowned for batting above their like average. Like, we achieve so much. We'll constantly go on about per capita. We will constantly. If you talk with a Kiwi long enough, they'll be like, "Oh, mate, but per capita, oh, mate, considering our population, you would not believe." And it's literally because we've always felt we've got to compete with Australia, whereas Australia's like. Australians go, oh, we compete with, England and China and America. And New Zealand's like, nah, screw that. Can we be better than Australia?
Yeah.
And so the whole national psyche becomes focused on being better than Australia, which is so weird and so damaged.
I mean, it makes sense though, because we're like the, if you conquer us, then you can compete with New Zealand, America, and China. Like we're the stepping stone. Yeah. Just moving across.
Yeah.
Because we're losing that battle. I don't know if you checked the scores, but the USA, China, and England are winning. Not even in the Olympics. I remember Sydney 2000 Olympics. I was like in the opening ceremony. We came like 5th or something in like the medal tally, or 6th. And I was like, fuck yeah, we got it. And now we just stink.
Oh, per capita, though, man.
Per capita. Unbelievable. Not even good at swimming anymore. That stings. That stings to my national identity. That's all we got. We're good at being wet.
You just got to get chased by more sharks, mate. That's always been my theory, is that Australians are good at swimming because you have things to chase you.
Oh, come on. You never see them. You must. Are there shark attacks? Did they ask you about it?
Occasionally. It's a bit cold for us.
It's a bit cold, okay.
Yeah, it's a bit cold for us to swim and cold for the sharks to swim too. But yeah, down south, I think you get a few of the sharks coming over.
Because like South Africa's got just as many shark attacks as Australia, but it's just they've got other things going on.
Yeah.
They've got other things they get asked about. Whereas in Australia, it's just like, oh, so the sharks, huh? Sharks. Still a threat?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, never seen one.
You've never seen a shark?
Never seen one. I know it's going to blow English people's minds, and I'm not just swatting them out of my bathtub, but...
I've seen, like, little ones.
Like wobbegongs? I've seen a wobbegong.
Yeah, or like, tiny sort of little... that's a baby big one or something, like in the shallows. Like, because it has to sort of be in around the coast and the rocks, so they're usually...
Right, where
they're big.
Before they're big.
Yeah.
They get like little shallows fish when they go into surfers.
Yeah, like,
and tourists.
Yeah.
The shark's favourite diet.
Well, in Western Australia, I think people forget Rupert Murdoch's an Australian, and so he owns like papers over there, but it's the same brain and the same formula as the tabloids over here.
Yeah.
But over here, it's like immigrants and Brexit, but in Western Australia, it's not a massive thing, so it's sharks. So it's like, but it's the same outlay and same platform.
Honest to God, I think
like the sharks are coming to take our jobs.
I think the front page of the West Australian is a shark-related headline. 4 times out of 10.
Like, she's not
serious?
joking. She's not joking.
Oh my God.
I can't.
I've never seen a shark-related headline in Sydney. We get the proper tabloids being like, these goddamn immigrants coming over, stealing our sharks, putting them in soup. Like,
So as we've established, they need that in Perth for the economy. So they're not going to go, these immigrants coming over here, going down our mine shafts. So they're like, oh, who can we be afraid of? The sharks. The sharks are coming.
Yeah.
We can't have the immigrants. They're keeping this economy afloat. Very crucial.
Yeah, because it'll be front page shark news.
Front page shark news.
and then open pages like local Perth celebrities, or sort of page 3 sort of thing, and then the next page is like whatever global crisis is happening. It's
now that we've covered the sharks and the local celebrities.
Yeah, it's
what is going on with climate change?
Massive political motion that's just been passed or something, but you have to get through the sharks and then the bikini girl, and then you can get to the news.
And it'll be something stupid like Greta Thunberg. Doesn't she look like a shark? Dun, dun, dun.
Shark-related content. Man, I was watching the AFL Grand Final, streaming it illegally because I'm Australian, and I will not pay for a live pass. Fuck that. I love that I said I was going to do the water pour, and Laura's just like, mate, you've missed your shot.
You have.
For all the listeners who don't realise how polite Laura is, I haven't even sipped. That's why I'm selfish. My water, I was drenched I was quenched.
Very.
But no, I was streaming the AFL, and it was clearly an AFL stream like stolen from like Tasmania, because there were just like all these adorable like 90s style commercials about like Launceston's famous dress shop. Like it looked like it was made in Word, like just word art stuff, being like real cheap dresses, Launceston dollies, but like you're just like, what is like, you forget how small little bits of Australia are, and fucking Tassie is the littlest one.
I love going there so much. It's one of my favourite ones. There's a gig there that Gavin Baskerville runs at Jokers in Hobart, and I love doing that one so much. And I went over to MC a wedding.
MC a wedding?
Yeah, it was in Silver Sands.
A friend's wedding or professional wedding?
A friend's mother's wedding.
Okay.
And I was the host for it. Stood on the back of a pickup truck, and it was a beautiful little wedding. But then you go for a drive, and Tassie's such an interesting landscape. It's so beautiful and so horrible at exactly the same time.
Why is it horrible?
Oh, I think like the colonial history of Tasmania, like the indigenous history is pretty fucking bleak.
Is it worse than other places? I'm quite an ignorant person. Usually I play this with guests who are from the UK. And everyone's like, that makes sense, it's from Australia. But also Australia.
also sort of some of the harshest convict history is that sort of convict built sort of big brutal things on the cliffs of a sea, and if you were sent to Tasmania, that's a brutal landscape to find yourself in.
That was like the little island off the big island where we sent the criminals.
Well, Tasmania's a lot more like Britain in terms of its climate.
Right.
Because it's the most closest to New Zealand in terms of, so you got that South Antarctic. So it's not, if you're a UK and you've never been to the Australia, and that it's the most British kind of seashore you can get. It's actually Abel Tasman, the guy who founded it, was the guy who found New Zealand, because like most Dutch people, he was looking for Australia. And I love the story because he got to Tasmania and he was like, all right, it's around here somewhere. It's either north or east.
Yeah.
And so he went east and fucking missed it. But he found New Zealand.
Right. That's it. That's
why it's the Tasman Sea.
Right. That makes total sense. But like, surely finding New Zealand is more impressive, you know? Like, Australia's fucking massive. Like, you'll hit it eventually.
It's more embarrassing to miss Australia, though, surely.
But that's the history of Pacific discovery by Europeans.
Yeah.
You know, because
they were trying to find Australia.
They were trying to find Australia and they missed.
Samoa.
And so we all got colonized by these people. And Pacific Islanders are the world's greatest sailors at this point. And we're literally colonized by these people who are such bad sailors they can't find Australia. But they've got guns. So we're like, yeah.
Are you sure instead of taking our land, you wouldn't prefer some directions?
Yeah. Well, Captain Cook, the famous English explorer, he took a navigator with him, Tupaia, from I want to say Tahiti.
Right.
And so when he got to New Zealand, he couldn't speak Maori, and neither could Tupaia, but the language was close enough, the root language was there, that he could kind of interpret a little bit. He was basically like the dude giving Cook street cred. Like, just go, look, they're okay. They're okay. Like,
yeah.
They're gonna look around. They're gonna.
I like Laura just wincing at the story, being like, street cred. Oh no.
I, just for any Maori people listening, I'm not blaming Tahiti for Captain Cook. Like, that's all him.
Has Tahiti ever been blamed for anything?
Probably not. But it's the French who own it.
The French, because the French took a bit, didn't they? The French,
No, they
French
took the whole
Poly-
thing.
They took the whole thing.
It's the whole thing. It's French Polynesia.
I thought it was French Polynesia, but I thought that was like a bit. I didn't realize it was like the whole section.
No, the whole section of Tahiti's in French Polynesia,
right?
Which is run by the French.
But like
most of the Pacific's owned by other people.
Right. Why do I not know anything about this? Did you know about this as an Australian person? Or
I knew
just since...
bits. I've learned a lot.
Yeah. Because we don't really
you
get...
won't stop talking about it.
Yeah, because like we don't really get much of the history.
I
Like,
think Australians are not educated on these things for a reason.
but shouldn't we know that we did bad?
Devil's advocate. It's only one. It's two. No, it's one of your coasts, the Pacific. You got Tasman on one side, Pacific, and then you got India. And like Lewis from Western Australia, and they got, Western Australia's the size of New Zealand, well, bigger than New Zealand, and they've got their own. So that's a landmass in the group. So there's a whole section of cultural disasters there that they've got to learn about before they even get to the Pacific side. I'm just filling her in so she doesn't put her foot in it when she comes and meets her Pacific family in New Zealand.
To get on top of it, because I mean, I was looking this up on the like before I had you guys on, just because I was curious, because like in Australia the indigenous population is like less than 3% according to Wikipedia, which is incredibly low if you consider it was 100% quite recently. And then in New Zealand it's more like, I think it was about 17% Maori, and then like another 10% Polynesian on top of that. And it's just like, so surely, like, would you say the average New Zealander is much more aware of like indigenous cultures and like Maori culture and Polynesian culture?
Yeah, but I think it's been it's a newer thing than people think. There was a renaissance in the late 80s and early 90s of Māoridom and Māori culture, and a real push to bring back the identities and the language. The language is the key part. And by proxy, that's flown into Pacific Renaissance within the New Zealand community, and then an embracing of other cultures as well.
Right.
It comes back to rugby, it comes back to the All Blacks. Those guys have been doing the Māori haka since they came to the UK back in the late 1800s. Trench warfare, you might be interested to know, was invented by the Māori.
Right. Well, when they were fighting
the British, the pass system in New Zealand. So the British took that. So in terms of embracing, or, it starts off as taking, and then it sort of comes off learning about their indigenous culture. It was much more, but I think people also I didn't appreciate as a New Zealander how diverse the indigenous cultures of Australia are. I think, again, that comes back to not being able to grasp the size. Like that. Of course, tribes in Adelaide and tribes in Perth of indigenous people might have similar thing, but that's the same as tribes in Germany and tribes in Portugal might have similar but completely different.
Yeah, and I think people do not understand that if they're not Australian. It's just like, they're all the same, right? It's like, no, there's was it thousands of different tribes?
There's a great map you can look at that will show you the maps of different...
You've got a lot of map-based recommendations in this podcast.
Yeah,
Laura's great passion is maps.
Yes.
Yeah.
And which
do you know what it's called? I will put it in the description so people can look at it.
I think you can.
I'll find it.
To find it, I would just look up Indigenous map of Australia.
I mean, that seems like a very reasonable.
Yeah, that's what I would look up.
Some of the stuff sounds profound, but actually it's depressingly easy.
Just like, I wonder why I've never looked that up. Oh, because it makes me sad. Like, it's like, oh dear, what have we done?
Yeah, but it is interesting to see, because it's so tightly packed, but and it looks like there's so many, but you think of the actual landmass that those people are occupying, and it's big.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah, and and the fact that so much of the land was lived in and used, and once it was colonized, we just left the middle still.
I mean, we've turned it into a bit of a donut, really.
Yeah.
Isn't it like 90% of the Australian population lives within like an hour of the coast? Like it's something like nuts. Like when you consider most of it is the middle. It's just like we're just like, nah, like we do want to be able to get to the water though. We want to be able to relate to these shark-based headlines. That's what we want.
That always gets me is like the population of Western Australia. I think it could have changed. I think it's 2 million.
What, the whole thing?
Yeah.
Isn't Perth like 1.2?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like it's
just no one there.
There's no one there, and that's why I find it so fascinating, interesting to sort of travel here and just get on a train and it stops at Birmingham, or go up to Manchester, and the whole way I'm like, there's so many people
They're fucking everywhere.
along this train line.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get a long train through the suburbs in Australia, you can, I know they're not high-speed trains, but, if you even get a train through Melbourne, you'll end up in Frankston.
Mm.
That's an hour and 10 or something on the train, I think.
Yeah. And there's...
And it's not another city with millions of people in it.
Yeah, definitely not. And also just the density still isn't there. Like even though it's like an hour within Melbourne, just kind of there's not a lot of people out there anymore. I don't know what happened to them, but as we got closer to Frankston or Franger, just for any Australian listeners.
Why are there so few people in Australia?
It's a long way away. We've got some pretty tight immigration policies.
Yeah.
But also, planes have only got to a point where you can get there reasonably quick. It's
it used to take a couple of days, didn't it? Like back in the old cricket tours, they'd have to stop over and refuel and stop again.
Get a couple of kegs, mate.
Yeah, no, put the VBs. I forget who. Oh, you guys probably won't know. Like who was the record for the most tinnies on the flight?
Booney, mate.
Booney, yeah.
It's always Booney. Good Tasmanian.
Good Tasmanian boy. It's like something he's saying. It's like 50. Like it's just this insane amount of beers. He drank 50 beers on the flight.
You're probably going, why do I know that? I'm the Kiwi at the table. I'll tell you why. Because he was a cricket player and we don't like him in New Zealand.
Why not?
Because they bowled a cricket ball underarm to us.
That's true. But was that his era? That was Trevor Chappell.
No, it was Trevor Chappell, mate. It was, but we never forget in New Zealand, and it was taught in schools when I was growing up as a kid.
The underarm delivery.
Yep. When you learned about Australia, you learned about Australian cricket, and you learned about Trevor Chappell. I shouldn't know that name. No interest in it whatsoever.
Look, you got it. It's very important. It's part of our history, and I wonder why they don't like us.
Could not tell you who's in the Australian cricket team now,
really?
But can tell you quite a few players through to about 1995.
Yeah, it is. I really thought that you guys liked us too, but maybe that's just the arrogance.
I think we do outside of New Zealand. I think in London.
As soon as we get here, we're all
Antipodeans.
We band together. Antipodean. How do you guys feel about that as a term? I got to say, it frustrates me greatly. So they define us based on our location in relation to them. You know what I mean? It's like it's not Steve, that's my next door neighbor. You know what I mean? Like you refuse to give him a title, like his actual title. It's like, yeah, you're Antipodeans, like lumping us in like we're all the same.
Yeah. It's really frustrating when that happens, isn't it, bro?
I like it because it means you are from as far away as possible.
That's what you like about
Yeah, I'm from the opposite of here. Is what when I say it, that's what I feel in my heart.
So Laura,
you're from the opposite. Yeah, I'm
not like you. So you're still enjoying your time in London then?
Yeah, I really do like it. It's really nice. But with the fury between the countries, you notice it because when I say I've married a Kiwi, people go, "Oh, that's great! A Kiwi! What good luck you've had!" And James gets, "Oh, an Australian. Is she okay?"
Oh, really? Like you Kiwis are like, you've married a...
Yeah, like you've got
you got to marry within the family. Like that
she alright? Is she a good one?
It's a real weird kind of. Oh, so you met your wife overseas? Yeah. Oh, okay. And you guys got married overseas? Yeah. Oh,
she Dutch, Swedish, English.
No, mate, she's the most Australian woman I could find. How Australian? Perth Australian.
Perth Australian.
Yeah.
Most Australian women you could find. Is that an insult or a compliment?
Look, I don't think it's fitting, but. Yeah, I mean, it is. I do have a.
It's relative. I mean, you're not in a bikini going, "Where the bloody hell are you?" I mean, I think go.
That was Lara Bingle, right? Back in the day. What a great tourism campaign.
I think it worked.
Everyone heard of it. Yeah.
Tony Blair referenced it.
Really?
Yeah, it's a weird moment for Tony Blair. Not the weirdest moment for Tony Blair.
He's done a lot, the old boy. But you guys moved here. Did you move here together, or were you both kind of planning to move here? What was the trajectory of
here?
What
happened, James?
Oh, because why are you guys making this seem like I brought up something terrible?
We're just trying to work out how we ended up married. It's still something we're trying to retrace our steps on.
Yeah.
So I was moving. I met James 6 months before I was less than 6 months.
Yeah.
4 months before I moved.
Right.
And then we said goodbye in Melbourne. I moved to the UK, and then James came with me. But that was all sort of decided in a really weird...
I think I was coming to do Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And then I had quite a nice career in New Zealand. And then we got here and sort of decided that maybe...
We were engaged 2 days after James arrived.
2 days after you arrived here,
And then we're married.
Who popped the question?
No,
No.
it was floated as a joke that then got very earnest, and then we were married 4 weeks later, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
Even in, like, our engagement period sort of coincides with the... like, we say engaged, we had to legally wait for the British government to approve us.
Yeah.
I think we could have got, like... I think we generally were of the mindset that if we could have got married that weekend, we might have just cracked it
I think
out.
4 weeks waiting time, I think it's good, because that's then you feel like you're doing what's legally required to make it a sane
Yeah.
decision. But the
Cooling
thing
off
was
period.
that James was...
We're really selling the romance here.
Yeah, just like the legal requirement
It's
really
not-
made me realise it was the right decision.
It's not that it was a wrong decision, and
Yeah.
it's one of those ones where it is simultaneously a very romantic thing to do and a very like practical matter of fact. Like once you start to meld the romance of love and affection and into like cold hard legal documents, it's sort of a weird...
Yeah.
For some reason in my head, that's an incredibly Australian thing. It's just like the romance, but also the legal requirement. Like you got to
Yeah.
fill out your paperwork if you want to feel the best ever.
We just wanted to call it. It was just sort of a nice thing to sort of be like, no, I reckon we could get married. It'd probably be all right. I mean, that'd be silly. It'd be crazy. We shouldn't do it. But what's the paperwork on that? Like, oh yeah, we could. So like we could get married in like what 5 weeks. That would be this date. That's the 1 day off in Edinburgh. That'd be silly.
I wonder
And
how
then,
hard it is to get like married in Scotland. I don't know. I'm at the stand this weekend up in Edinburgh. I'll just pop in and see. Like, just like I was like, it was real weird the way it synced up because
There
I
was
was
no-
doing gigs in Edinburgh, so I just popped into the registry office and was like,
If I wanted to get married,
Yeah, there was no proposal.
No.
There
no
was,
proposal.
there was no question.
no, there was nothing. You know, nothing. No hilltop, no ring,
No.
like none of that stuff, mate.
Fucking true blue
It was just-
Antipodean.
It was just like we started like pulling at a thread of like,
Right.
Yeah.
oh, but what if? But oh yeah, do you want it? Yeah, sure. Like,
So like a very, very like consensual game of chicken.
yeah,
It's like, is everyone-
we're
is
still
everyone
in
like-
it.
Still, like,
Yeah.
like typical comedians, we just found a thread and we just kept pulling on it to see what would come out.
Yeah. Because you hadn't met each other's family beforehand,
No.
right?
I'd met James's mum very briefly.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Is that not like a big thing? Because like I'm engaged and stuff, and like I asked the blessing and all that stuff. I did all the
we didn't have to
tradition.
ask I mean, we had to ask a blessing because we had to ask them to send over documents.
Yeah,
So that was kind of inherent in asking the blessing. But
but it was sort of your mum's idea.
yeah, she said it as an offhand joke when she said goodbye to me because we didn't intend to get married and I didn't intend to leave New Zealand.
It's all been a terrible accident. I've got to go.
Well, because then what happened is I got a TV show and a radio series back
Right.
in New Zealand that I had to periodically return to do. And so that, it's made our London experience slightly, what's the word I'm looking for? Hon?
I have no
I was
idea.
going to say like scattered, but that doesn't feel quite right. You know what, like Laura's been here for a much larger chunk than I have, but I've come back and forth here for years.
Right.
So we've worked in slightly different experiences.
James
of
is a
London.
British citizen.
I am.
I did my research. You're Welsh.
Yes, my mum is from a place called the Gower, which is
Gower.
it's a group of hills south of a place called the Mumbles, which is in Swansea area. It's a very famous surf coast.
Right.
The
The
Gower.
famous Welsh surf coast.
Oh man, Welsh surfing's a thing.
What?
Yeah, Welsh love their surfing. Like insane considering the temperature, But surf culture in Wales is
Wetsuit.
a genuine thing.
I like that the Welsh people kind of have like New Zealand interests with like without the climate to properly like
They're
justify
so
it.
Kiwi. They're so hilarious. The Welsh are like, they love their rugby. They love a good pub sing along. They love good surf culture. They're like hilariously Kiwi. My dad got slightly kidnapped when he went to Wales.
Slightly kidnapped.
No, because what happened is he went into my mum thought he'd gone missing.
Yeah.
Because he didn't come home for hours, and it turned out he'd be down in the local pub spinning stories about the All Blacks. This is back in the early 80s.
Okay.
To all of the Welsh people. My dad was like, Wikipedia back in the early 80s, telling them stories about Samoan rugby players he knew and getting bought lots of free beers. But he did disappear in the early 80s in a small town in Wales for about 6 hours. So Mum was a bit concerned.
As you would be like, wait, what happened? I don't know if he's got that many hours worth of stories. We should call someone.
Oh no, my dad has my dad has so many hours worth of stories that most of my shows are about stories that my dad's told me, which I then convert into my own stories.
Right.
And if any of our children become stand-up comics, they'll probably convert my stories. No, I mean,
It can't be genetic.
No.
I like that you guys like both had a sip there at the same time. Just like children, yeah, unbelievable.
No, it's more like children becoming artists. That'll be like,
Yes.
like, please be accountants or lawyers or
Something.
something.
Anything but this?
Environmental
Yeah.
activists.
Oh,
Environmental
yeah,
activists.
sure.
There's no money in that either.
No, but
It's more dignity.
There's a future in it.
yeah, there's a future. It might
It's going to be work. But so wait, so you're a British citizen. You can stay here as long as you want.
Yeah, I mean, it's, well,
And as a married couple, you can stay here as long as you want.
I think so. We're hoping so, but it is income tested still. So we make enough money. We're just nervous because we're self-employed, so it's hard to prove that we make enough money.
And also
in a trajectory thing, like I can't promise that in 12 months time this exact amount will be coming in. It could be more, it could be less. There's no real way to tell.
And with Brexit, it's sort of, no one knows what the post-Brexit legislation is going to be on this kind of stuff, because they're all talking about a whole bunch of different deals with the colonies now that Europe's going to be shut off to them. So
could be easier, could be harder.
I mean, I saw that thing being floated that Australia and Britain will have free movement, which I'm personally against, even though like it would make my life fucking easy. I just know that if they're floating that, then they know their economy is going to be fucked.
Yeah.
And we're just going to have to put up all these Brits coming to Australia, being like, how much fruit you want? I'll pick it. I'll do it. Like, and I'm sure New Zealand they'd float
It's
the
hot.
same thing. It's hard.
Someone's running this podcast, but in the Antipodes.
The Union Jack on.
I mean, the last time we gave British people free movement in New Zealand, we got colonized. So we're a bit more on edge about that happening again.
A little bit careful.
A little bit careful. I mean, this is the problem, is that when it comes to Brexit, if you cut off the European market and you are an empire, albeit a dying empire, you lean on your colonies, as every empire in the history of imperialism has done.
Yeah.
And I think New Zealand and Australia and all the other like colonies are sort of beginning to wake up to the idea of like, oh, we're still colonies. So
yeah, I think that might, if that all happens, but especially because the Queen is surely on her last legs. Like, she must. She just seems like she's never gonna die.
Well, she's the richest woman in the UK. Of course, she's not gonna die easily.
Rich people die.
But they spend heaps of money to not die.
That's true.
That's why I don't think you should celebrate the Queen when she gets old, because she's supposed to get old. She's that rich.
She's meant to be writing herself heaps of letters.
Yeah.
It's funny because like I think that might actually push the Republican thing in Australia anyway, because that when we were younger, it really had a bit of a go. Now it's kind of tailed off.
I think it would do the opposite.
Really?
Even.
You think we'd get closer?
Yeah, I reckon it'd be Harry's and Meghan's and Kate and Will's, and I reckon people might like double fist it, just
Cling on.
Relocate. Just relocate the entire royal family to Australia.
That'd be chill.
Just move the centre.
Take them.
Yeah.
Adelaide maybe.
Adelaide, yeah.
Just move, like grab London.
Perth,
grab
get
everyone.
mining.
Get them all. Yeah, get them all in. Get the royal family.
Mining.
Into the mines.
Yeah,
There's diamonds there.
Yeah. Here you guys like jewels.
You just steal all the crown jewels, hide them down a mine.
Go on, Les. Get them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so how's your experience with the UK? Because like Laura and I have spoken about it. I think both lovingly and negatively.
Yes.
Probably equal measure. But what about like James? Were you coming here before you guys moved here together? Like, had you spent more time here?
Yeah, I'd come here annually. I'd go and do something like Edinburgh, but also I was trying to get to know my British family. I grew up without them.
Right.
My granddad wasn't very keen on my parents' marriage, and my mum sort of lost contact with the family for about 20 years. So my adulthood, I've been coming over here partly to gig, but also to just rebuild those connections, which has been actually really nice for us being over here, because it means that there's people Laura can meet. But my experience of Britain's also interesting because I'm a person of colour, and there are differences here to in the Antipodes, in Australia and New Zealand both, when we talk about people of colour. I think there's less hard lines. It's sort of a catch-all, whereas over here in London, you talk about people of colour, then you talk about brown people, you talk about black people, talk about Asian, Southeast Asian. It's because they've been having these conversations for so long, it's very defined roles. It also means I experienced some very strange racism over here that I'm not necessarily prepared for, because in Australia and New Zealand, when I get racism, it's usually Maori or Pacific or Middle Eastern based, depending on where I am. I'm aware of my complexion. I'm aware of what my complexion looks like with a tan. Over here, I will occasionally get Indian and Pakistani racism, which I'm not prepared for, because I've never had that before. Because I don't, to me, and to anyone from Australia and New Zealand, I don't look like I'm from India or Pakistani, but English people apparently can't tell the difference. So that's led to some. It's got worse since the Brexit vote.
Wow, even noticeable for yourself.
I've had it on the tube, and I can tell you right now, I've been coming here since early 2000s. I'd never had British racism on public transport for myself until after the Brexit vote, and it's happened twice.
Weird.
And I'll say that London is a real decent city, I find, for race relations. There's massive issues here, but if like someone calls you out on the tube or the bus, people normally jump in. Then after the Brexit vote, I had a couple of incidents and no one jumped in, and that was weird.
Weird. It's so weird that like you'd never experienced racism on public transport, because as an Australian, that's like our favourite place for racism. You can
in the UK,
it's the arena. That's where we put it.
That's where we put it. Well, what about yourself, Laura? Because you kind of came over.
So far, no racism
for
me.
Oh my god, that's unbelievable. I think as an Australian, they do kind of view us a little differently.
Yeah, but fuck them. No, I think it's interesting because of my ancestry. My grandmother was Italian on my dad's side, but the rest are just super murdery. Convicts. Like that's the it's still generations, but I am British.
Yeah.
My ancestors did heaps of murder, and now I come back and do your arts festivals. Like, that's the deal. I'm what you wanted. Like, when people are like, oh, Australians, I'm like, yeah, but this is what you wanted. You wanted
a rehabilitated...
You wanted a penal system
to
breed out the criminals.
Yeah, this is like the most effective prison rehabilitation program ever.
I'm great. Give me a grant.
Give you a grant?
I want that.
Yeah, I just find it interesting with like the Australian thing, because like they do think we're like dumb somehow, which I don't really understand. Like I don't know what they like.
I think I get that.
You get it? Maybe it's just me being like a Sydney dude. I'm like, what the fuck? How dare you? We're a big city too, kind of.
I think Crocodile Dundee probably has a lot to say about the... in the same way that Flight of the Conchords has a lot to say about how New Zealand culture is now interpreted.
Like very whimsical, musical people.
Yeah, I honestly think most people at this point think that New Zealand accents sounds either like Brett, Jermaine, or Reese Darby. You know, it's either sort of really whimsical and then or kind of deep and a bit slower. or just really high pitched in prison. And that's literally the three accents most people, or Taika's space alien in Thor. Like that would be the other New Zealand accent.
I was actually going to say, the Thor thing. I'm like, that's a Kiwi. That's a Kiwi alien. This is great stuff. But you came here more professional reasons.
Yes.
As James said, his had a lovely career in New Zealand, and he's come over here. But like in Australia, you definitely did have a great career. But we've definitely talked about how you're like, I've hit the ceiling. I need to go.
Yeah, it does feel like, depending on what you want to do as well. Like I came here because I had scripts, like narrative comedy that we don't make on the scale. Like I've been working on a pilot here that's now had a full 12 months of paid professional development on this one script, and that's pretty unheard of for somebody of my profile.
But like not to big you up too much, but you've been like writing on Australian TV for like years on like the premiere.
I wrote on the McAuliffe Mad as Hell, and I did 2 seasons of that. But I was the first female writer that they had ever had, and I started on season 7, and that was only in 2017 that I started working.
But that would be like one of Australia's premier comedy programs. But
I worked on that for less than 12 months. I would say 2 seasons that rolled over.
But like I would argue like that's more credentials than a lot of people who are given opportunities here would have.
Okay.
That's what I mean. Like it's not like you're just like some comedian just with like, I got an idea, please read it. Like, you're in there and you're still like, I couldn't take the next step there.
Yeah, that's why I'm just couldn't. There felt like there was so many limitations on that, and the idea of pitching something that is, maybe hour-long episodes or, a full series of something, it just doesn't seem to be not impossible, but it doesn't seem to be facilitated.
Sure.
In the same way that it has been over here.
Because you've been here a very short period of time before.
It was the reason I moved. Was that the writer's agent that I'm signed with over here was going to start pitching the show, and they had a lot of confidence in it. I didn't. I was sort of like, well, no one's ever wanted this script. Or, to speak with me about it or anything like that. And then within 2 weeks of them sending it out, we had a lot of interest from New York, and then a lot of interest here. And I'm glad that we ended up staying here. Because I think it's been a really great learning experience, and I really like getting to live here. But yeah, it took 2 weeks, whereas it was just felt like it was butting heads against dead-end closed doors.
How long were you pitching it in Australia? Or were you even pitching it? Can you even pitch something like that in Australia?
Yeah, that's sort of the problem is it's like, oh, this guy might want to talk to you, or I know a friend who could do this, or maybe if you write it all up and then film it yourself, we'll have a look at it and see if we want to buy it once you've already made it. But
not particularly like industry.
Yeah, or can you cut it? Can you cut it down to a 3-minute web series, and then we'll see if we can make it into a pilot, and then we'll see if we make the pilot to a series. And here they're just willing to.
You're like, hey, good script.
Yeah, it is a different sort of attitude.
Yeah. And so does that mean that you guys are going to be here for the foreseeable? I
hope so. It's at the stage now where it will either star Oscar-winning actors or go in the bin. Anywhere between those 2 points.
Highs and lows, really.
Yeah.
Peaks and troughs.
Yes, either somebody goes, this is amazing, let's make it, or in the bin. I think in this particular industry, there's absolutely no way to trust or I've seen so many big projects get pulled at the last minute, and I've seen so many tiny ones battle their way all the way up to the top, and you can never really make a call. So hopefully stay for the foreseeable future, which according to what climate scientists is 2 years, 3.
This has been a very climate change heavy podcast, I think. Which I mean, it is what we're at right now. And especially like in this country, they're like rubbish at it. They don't know. They don't care. Australia, they care. You know, we care.
Bear in mind that the British people, I say this with love and respect, the British people are the people who colonized Australia and decided that that climate was where they should send the prisoners, and this climate is where they should stay. So they've never been great at really figuring out that kind of stuff. Like, Byron Bay, let's send the prisoners there, and we're going to live in Birmingham. Seems to be the city to shit on this podcast.
No, fuck it. Let's do classic. Stoke-on-Trent.
Stoke-on-Trent.
Absolutely right. But no, so just I always like to ask this in the podcast as we wrap up. Are you guys planning to stay here, like in the future? You're going to go back? If you're going to go back, Australia versus New Zealand, the ultimate rivalry?
I feel weird that I may not live in my own country again, because now that I've married a Kiwi, it feels like if we go back to the Antipodes, it would be New Zealand, because that is a place where James can get some nice work, and it's a really lovely lifestyle. We can quite comfortably live there, and there would possibly still be more work for me than there would be to go back to Australia, and that feels quite odd to feel like I can't see a way back to
in this industry to live.
Because I don't know if James could get enough work in Australia.
Yeah.
So I would have to have a lot, and I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, I get that. And James, what do you?
Yeah,
Do you have a preference?
Well, I'm just coming to terms with the fact I'm not going to be able to get a lot of work in Australia. I'd always held on to that delusion until now. But it's a funny thing is like Laura's right and wrong. There's plenty of work for me in Australia, but it means doing
picking fruit.
Well,
I think the government has just said
picking fruit, working in a mine.
What do you want? Which one?
That mining money's pretty good. I know a guy.
Comedically, I could end up doing quite a few cruise ship gigs,
which
I'm good at doing the gigs, but I'm quite traumatized by being on the cruise ships.
Sure.
In New Zealand, there's some very lovely
people
work.
Were meant to sail the Pacific.
No. You've seen Moana, you know the way. It's the kind of thing where I do a lot of political comedy back home.
Sure.
Sort of what I made my name back home doing, and I've enjoyed doing that in Australia. I was talking to some mates back home about being here, and I want to be here because it seems like London right now is again, and it's not always, but again, it's a hub of there's something happening here, and it feels like
Brexit.
Yeah, exactly. That's the chaos, and it feels like we're in the heart of the chaos.
That was the most typical English response I've ever had. Like
Brexit,
someone's trying to like compliment your city that you live and raised in, and you're just like, yeah, Brexit shit. Anyway, guys, what about this rain? But no, so it's a hub here. You feel there's a good energy.
Well, it feels like there's a creative energy, like in terms of doing social commentary and in terms of being in the chaos. You know, it's much more in America. Their chaos feels very widespread, whereas I think with Britain and with everything that's going on here, London is actually very much encapsulating a lot of what's happening here. And so being here for the next couple of years, living through that and being able to do work, being privileged enough to be able to do work and sort of experience it all, I think would be good. And then being able to escape.
Whenever we want. We've got this escape rope, this bang.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind going back to New Zealand. There's some nice work there. I'd be excited to go to Australia, but in the same way that I'd like to make the work I make in New Zealand in Australia or over here, which is often social commentary, but also more like educational, like we were doing today, like just comedically talking to people about the Pacific.
Sure.
And they go, I didn't know that. And it's like, if I can do that here or do that in Australia, I'd be happy.
Yeah. Do you think there's space like in the UK for like not just like an Antipodean, but like Polynesian Antipodean to do political commentary? Like, do you think they'd be chill with
Yeah.
that, or?
I think we're at a point, like finally, where I think there is, in a very light sense, because Pacific is. Rose Matafeo won the Edinburgh Award 2 years ago. The Rock is the biggest action star in the world right now. Moana was a massive hit. It's not like when I first came over here in the early 2000s and I went, oh, my heritage is Samoan, and they went, where? And I had to go, do you know the All Blacks? And they go, yeah, the brown guys in the back line. Yeah, those guys.
The inside centre, I'm from there.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, people know the countries now, and they know the area. And there is that combination of curiosity and also interest in an outsider point of view, where I reckon you can do that. I think that's what Australians and New Zealanders have always been able to bring to the UK art scene when they've come over, is that combination of inside knowledge and outside perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely found, like with my stuff, the stuff that goes best is whenever I talk about them. They like being talked about.
Yeah.
Even if it's negative. Like, I call them ugly for 5 minutes. Like, this guy's fucking great. It's so nice he's noticed our culture. And like, sorry, Laura, just one last thing. We spoke about this in Australia. You're like a woman in comedy, shock horror. Sorry to break it to you, but like, you think we're talking about a very like narrow idea of what like a woman in Australian comedy and Australian media, like in what they want that to be. I know this is like a vague question. I'm trying to get to like the end of a conversation we've had another time quickly, and I'm not doing it very well.
I think it's very hard to sum up where we've had. I think it's still learning and growing, and we've had so many amazing female performers, and there's just a little thing that I do feel, and I felt it when I moved from Perth to Melbourne, where I would go on stage and it would be a little bit easier. The crowd wouldn't sort of have their arms folded and frowning at me, and I would go to Melbourne and people would go, oh, okay, you talk. And then I still felt in Melbourne people were sort of surprised by me on stage in a good way, of sort of like, oh, she's a bit different.
Sure.
And then here in London it feels like people go, oh, we didn't have an expectation of what you were going to be, so we're not. I don't feel that slight retraction.
Right.
Still.
They don't have an idea that you're then subverting. Like, they're not like, oh, a woman is about to do comedy, she'll probably...
Yeah, something like that. Just that little bit where I feel people come to it faster.
Yeah.
They'll go, oh, okay, this is what it is, without something like, this is not what I expected, or I've already prepared myself to not like this. And, that's changing and it's developing, and it's, it's a part of a very long conversation with many different perspectives on it. But
yeah, I feel like I pageanted you there. Just like try to make you explain something very complex very quickly.
Yeah, and I refuse.
I know, and I'm very sorry about that.
World peace.
I believe in peace. Final question I'd like to ask anybody. If you could live anywhere else in the world, where would you live? Anywhere. Forgetting careers. Forgetting where you have to live to get ahead in this horrible industry.
I mean, Wellington is pretty up there. It's a pretty nice city. I don't know. I'd like to live in Alaska for a little while.
Alaska?
Yeah.
I've not heard that
So
one before.
weird.
That's such a weird...
No, it's because I'm going to say San Francisco, which is same coast, and like just a bit warmer, and with better basketball. Which is all I want.
Yeah, San Francisco
You
would be
just want to be
nice.
around Golden State? Do you want to be...
I'm not a massive Golden State fan. I appreciate what they've done because they've stayed with it, but I've got friends from Oakland. And San Fran, I always flew through on the way to London. There was a flight back in the day from New Zealand to San Fran. So I get a little stay, and it's got all of that Wellington, Melbourne culture going on. And it's amazing social political history in Oakland. And it just seems like a cool place to live.
And
And-
why Alaska? Just big into oil?
Yeah, just the oil.
Oil and salmon? Is salmon Alaska?
Salmon.
I think it sounds
Yeah, I
Alaska.
think so.
Bears.
Nature.
Sarah
Yeah.
Palin.
Yeah, like a bit of nothing. I think it's a different sort of Perth sort of a thing.
Yeah, that's we've talked about because like I'm from Sydney and I like more stuff. Like I'm like Sydney's not big enough. I
Less
need more stuff.
Yeah.
Laura's like less stuff forever. The less stuff, the better.
Yeah.
But for this, I guess we kind of need to be around stuff. All right, guys, thanks so much for coming on. Do you have anything to plug? Either of you guys got some stuff coming out?
Look, you can. I always say you can buy a comedy album off my website for £5, and of that, I will be able to buy like some sort of chicken burger, or maybe one of those little pots of pineapple that the Tesco sells, and I'm always very grateful for that.
And
Pineapple pie.
Yeah.
I have a mental health podcast called Eating Fried Chicken in the Shower, which is available on Apple, iTunes, or podcasts, whatever it is.
And YouTube?
It's on YouTube. Yeah, you can find it on YouTube. If you go to my YouTube channel, I've got little vids there
Yeah.
of me sitting in a shower eating fried chicken with New Zealand celebrities talking about mental health issues, which is as weird as it sounds.
Ideal. All right, Twitter handle?
At James Nokise.
Spell Nokise?
Nokise.
Dang. And Laura?
At Laura Davis Comic.
All right, thanks so much. Guys, the way we end the podcast, did you guys say cheers, mate, at the same time? It's less fun when you're from Australia and New Zealand, but hey, give it a crack. 1, 2, 3.
Cheers, mate.
Fucking crushed it. All right, cheers, guys. Catch you next week. Thank you. The Union Jackoff with Daniel Muggleton.